one of the things that happened before the divorce, one of the many God things that happened actually along that path, and the very first one was I was leaning in the shower. I was living in a mobile home in Jordan, and I was leaning against the shower and I was crying because of another night of his over drinking and yelling, and how was that affecting our children and various things, and of course no money. And so I'm leaning in there and I'm crying against the shower, and I suddenly heard my grandmother's voice very clearly, very distinctly say to me, "Have you prayed about it?" Now, I grew up in a family basically being told that you prayed for other people, you prayed for events to happen, general events, but you never prayed for yourself, that it was selfish to pray for yourself. And suddenly the idea that I could pray for myself, for something that was happening in my life, was just like so enlightening. I began a conversation with God at that moment. And I began to talk to God and what I referred to the angels on my shoulders that he sent to help me on a regular basis. I'm sitting there in the recliner, and I have no money, so I had the least, smallest, TV plan you could get. And I see something about the bottomless closets in Chicago. And that's a program that provides clothing for low-income women for interviews in the workplace. And I thought, my church could do that. So I sat down and wrote what I now know as a business plan. I was an art major, not a business major. But I sat down and thought, okay, so if we opened a program like this, who would we serve? Who could we, what would we do, etc. I made a few calls because at that point, I'm in the midst of the divorce. There's no money. I'm working with human services and trying to get bills paid and trying to survive. And so I asked one of my caseworkers. I said, what do you do if a woman comes to you and says, I need clothing for work? And she said, we give her, $50 to Kmart. I said, does anyone go with her? She said, no. I said, what if there was a place where you could send your women, where they would come in and they would find clothing for interviews in the workplace? And she said, how soon can you open your doors? So I sat down and prepared this grant. He said, well, you're going to have to talk to the vestry. Now, this is just about 6 months after I had started doing the Toastmaster classes or organization. I thought, okay, I practiced at Toastmasters. But I got up in front of the vestry and I said, okay, here's this idea. What about if we opened a place, a clothing closet that provided clothing for low-income women? And the next day, a girlfriend of mine called me, whose husband was on the vestry, and she said, he couldn't believe that was you. He'd never heard you talk like that. You were so passionate and so excited. They said they're going to support you whether you get the grant or not. I was like, okay. But then I'm thinking, I can't do this. I'm not a leader. I'm not a speaker. I'm in the midst of this terrible divorce. I don't have time to do this. Besides, I'm not the one to do it, and all the negative voices bubble to the top. No. But my friends at Trinity said, yes, you are. You're the one who can do it. You've got the passion. And along the way, each thing that came up, the right person would step forward. God would whisper in there, you have the answer to her question. Sometimes I hadn't even asked the question yet, and they would step forward. It was an amazing period in my life. I can't even begin to describe how, on one hand, my life at home with this divorce and everything going on with 2 teenage daughters and all this going on was such chaos, and yet so clearly I saw this Ready for Success program. I saw what had to happen. I saw who had to be involved. I saw where we had to go. And people started coming forward. And God was with me the whole way, because it would not have happened without those doors opening. And I have no doubt that those doors opened because of the power of the universe that was with us at the time. It was just amazing.